This is Niceguy Eddie, and you're listening to Rainbow Radio. In My Humble Opinion is coming up next. My guest tonight is an author, former model turned activist, Caroline Cossey. Pleased to have her on the program. Caroline, welcome.
Hello.
So, for those in the audience who live under rocks, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I started my life, and I was sexed as male, because that's how it is when you're born with your genitalia. Mm-hmm. And I was raised, for most part, as a young boy, and unfortunately didn't fit into that sort of role. And yes. It wasn't until later at school, having sex lessons and all that kind of good stuff, that I realized I wasn't into girls, and I just assumed I must be gay. Mm. But going up that avenue and discovering, no, I wasn't gay, and finally found that I was transgender, transsexual, as we were called back then. But now there's this big umbrella now that we is. Right. But yes, discovering I was transsexual and needed to go and get my mind and body as one.
Now, this was, if I get the timeline right, we're talking mid-1970s, yes?
Yes.
Now, there was not a lot known at the time. Certainly not public knowledge the way it is now.
No, I mean, I moved to London, and I am working, and I was in an actual house, and I used to run around, sort of getting in the spare time dressed as a girl and feeling comfortable in girls' clothes, but not fitting into the gay community, and felt very isolated until I met somebody that was going through a transition, and it was like, gosh, this was wonderful. And she put me on to the doctor, psychiatrist, and started the ball rolling.
Right. So it was through meeting that friend, that acquaintance, that you sort of, I mean, was it prior to that? Had you ever heard of that? Or, I mean, did you have any sense of what might be going on? Or
I hadn't. Wow. I mean, I just, I felt good. Well, I don't really sex the clothes, but I mean, I felt the clothes that I was more attracted to were feminine. I wanted to grow my hair. I wanted to, put makeup on and present myself in the best way I could to be attracted to, a man. But yeah, I was considered in the gay community as a drag queen. So there was a few places didn't even allow me in. So
right, and that didn't feel quite right either.
No. Wow. But, there's nothing wrong with being gay. I wish I had been. It would have cost me a lot less and, and not gone through all the agony.
Right. Well, and now once you're transitioning, if again, just I'm going back through it, I'm reading some of the background, but I wonder if I have the right take on this, that you had essentially been stealth, so to speak, in the modern parlance, but it was kind of a loud kind of stealth, right? I mean, you had a very public life.
Well, I was actually doing two jobs. I was studying to be a beauty therapist, a beautician. Mm-hmm. And in the evening, because the money when you're studying apprenticeship is very bad. So in the evening, I was working in a theatre and selling ice creams and taking people to the seats and all that sort of thing. And it was there that I met a choreographer who actually came up to me and said, "Have you ever thought about being a showgirl?" And it was like, "Showgirl?" I said, so I said, "I'm actually a boy." And he says, "I've heard all what's going on, but you're lovely, and I'd like you to come and audition at this club." And wow. In Paris, there's so many beautiful showgirls, and the best showgirls are actually the ones that have gone through transition and all the rest. So I thought, oh my gosh. But I went to the club and auditioned, and I got the job. Uh-huh. I wasn't billed as transgender or anything. I just shared a dressing room with another showgirl. There was, 16 dancers, and I just spent almost 2 years doing that and loved it. And from that, I just being able to live full time, and then had my breasts because I was working topless as a showgirl at that point. That was a little bit more money for me. Yeah. But I was en route to feeling comfortable. I was living my life 100% full time as a woman, as I felt comfortable, and then saving money, having the therapist and all that, what that's entailed to get to the point where I would get the okay from the therapist to see the surgeon. Right.
And then now at that time though, is this before or after the bring up some bad stuff here, just so people are aware of the history. But is this around? I believe it was 1978. There was the game show appearance, or the game show. role?
Oh, yes. No. This was much earlier. No.
Oh, earlier than that. Okay.
Yes, I was actually. I mean, I had surgery in 1974
Oh, okay.
for the full operation, but prior to that, I actually worked as a dancer, a showgirl for a couple of years. I went to Paris.
Yeah.
I auditioned for the Bluebells, a very, very famous troupe in Paris, and they worked in Vegas and went on tour. Mm-hmm. And I actually got accepted and had a contract, but they do a background check. And at that time, my passport had a restriction on it because the laws are that you can't have a full 5-year passport until you'd had surgery. So, restriction. So, checking into the background, the manager there found out that, and he said, "Oh my God, the reputation of the girls and everything. I wish you all the best, but no, we can't let you come on board." So, because I'd handed in my notice and everything, I still went to Paris. I continued working, but I went to a club which were very more liberal, the Alcazar, and I worked there. Mm-hmm. And from there, I met somebody that loved me for myself, not having surgery, but he said, "You've got the best of both worlds." And that was an important phase for me because up to that point, I didn't really have a relationship. It was, tough. I was tunnel visioned into knowing that I needed to feel complete and have the sex in the way that I needed to have it. And
still finding yourself, essentially.
Yeah. So that led me to Kuwait, living in Kuwait for some time, and getting repulsed at my body and feeling more determined that I needed to have the surgery. He didn't want me to, and he said, "You can have anything you want." I mean, I had a lovely, beautiful life handed to me, but the other aspect, I didn't know that he was actually married and had, I think it was 5 or 6 other wives. So,
married plus, wow. They're married and then some.
Yeah, wow, so no, I got out of that, came back and went to Rome and earned a living as a stripper, actually. And in Rome, you don't have to take all your clothes off, and you keep a small G-string. So I was able to perform as a stripper and earned the money, and went back to England, praying that the psychiatrist, because I'd gone over my timeline now, that would give me the okay to see the surgeon. And
wow.
And plain sailing. Wow. But that was in 74. I had surgery.
And the surgery was through the NHS then?
Well, it's done on the National Health, but once you get the okay from the psychiatrist to see the surgeon, you then get put on a waiting list, and that's another possible 2 to 3 years.
Gotcha.
So I had the money, and I thought, everyone was going out to Casablanca saying they do fabulous work there, and I was prepared to do that. But the psychiatrist was, "My God, no, you've done your time and all the rest of it. You've adjusted. You lived as a woman. You're obviously very together, because they go through such a stringent. You have to make sure that you're not just a transvestite, because I know they still come under this big new umbrella, but there's a big difference between being transvestite and transsexual."
Yes, so it's the transition and the surgery is not necessarily the right thing for everybody. It's the right thing for most people, but not everybody,
You get your identity sorted out, then you get your sexual feelings. And like I've always laughed and said, what's between your legs is a sex toy. If you can make it work for you, that's great. And it didn't work for me in the way that I needed it to work. So no, I just wanted to get rid of it and save the money and did that.
I'm stealing that explanation from you. I'm going to use that the next time I'm in a discussion with somebody about this sort of thing. That's brilliant, really.
So, I mean, after that, I had so many people saying, "Oh, are you a model?" I said, "No, I dance because I'm tall and thin." And I just went and done some pictures, and I auditioned for an agency, and they took me on. We done some tests and put together a card and sent it out, and work started coming in, and that was just amazing.
Right.
And you did talk about the game show, but I was doing modeling, I was doing other TV shows. You get, as a model, you get sort of little bits and pieces, comedy and walk-ons and the 2 Ronnies, and there's just lots of things. And then the game show, which was just new, and they auditioned all these girls, and I was picked for one of the 6. We were called the Gentle Sex, being secretaries, and we brought on the contestants, keeping score and all the rest of it, just a game show hostess.
Right.
And it was great, 12-week contract, and I was raring to go. But we were done the rehearsals, and all through rehearsals, I was absolutely stressed because one of the girls said, "My boyfriend remembers you from the Latin Quarter. You used to share your dressing room with Diana, and Diana used to know him." And I remember this character from years ago who said to me, "You can get your money together so much quicker. We're going to do some beautiful pictures, and then we're going to sell them to the various newspapers and say how we fooled them." And that didn't appeal to me at all. Right. So I just knocked that one on the head. But he showed up, and then I was in a state. I thought, everything was going to come out.
Yeah, yeah. So, well, and then it wasn't shortly thereafter that you had a call from the first run-in with tabloids. Is that right?
Yes, not long after that. I mean, I got out of the show. I got out of the contract with my letter from the doctor saying I was going to have a nervous breakdown and all the rest of it.
Because of just the fact that somebody with the show had essentially known or had figured it out.
Well, they had, but they'd also tipped off the media. So they were doing. I had the worst paper of all, the News of the World, suddenly doing background, and I had enough at the door. "Oh, come on, show us your birth certificate. Give us some proof." And I said, "Well, I don't have to prove." I mean, my agent was saying, "Don't you dare show them anything. Right. That's another story." Oh, Tula had to prove she was a woman, and all.
What I'm curious, and this is in the UK. For again, just background for anyone who's listening, and this is in the UK. Yes. And one of the reasons I asked about the NHS, because it's the NHS in 1974 would have, I mean, I know that there were gatekeepers, there was a waiting period, but they would have covered the cost. Whereas in the States, even today, many insurance companies won't. And it amazes me that England was more progressive in 1974 than the US is today. That's alone shocking. But then the other side of it I'm curious how the English libel laws would have played in at the time. Because, I mean, I've heard of, you can't even expose a fraudulent doctor or faith healer, liar like Andrew Wakefield or whatever without being threatened to be sued. And yet this involves invasion of privacy and involves certainly, it has an impact on career. I mean, was there not any, how would that apply in this case?
Well, at the time, I mean, once the story broke, which was a few years after that. I mean, I was hounded from the News of the World for 4 years before they got 100%. I mean, I left the country. I worked in Australia for a while, and when I got back, my agent said if they had 100% concrete, they would have printed it by now. Yeah. But they hadn't. Right. So she said, obviously they haven't printed anything, so just relax. And so I carried on and carried on modelling and what have you. Right. And then what happened? I got the Bond film, and not that I had any great part, but being a James Bond girl, they used to do the premieres and publicity shots, but you don't even get any sort of 5 lines or anything. But it was just great, and that caused the News of the World to go full steam and dig around, and they got access to my medical file at the Charing Cross Hospital where I had surgery and paid a medical student and got it. But I did consult with a lawyer, and unfortunately, it was the truth. They can print the truth.
I didn't think that I was under the impression that in England it didn't matter if they were invading privacy or if there was still an effect on your professional. I mean, I'm not obviously not an English libel lawyer, but I'm surprised because I've heard recent stories of essentially pseudoscientific frauds being called out by the skeptical community, the scientific community, and they've sued. And in some cases, they've won at least injunctions and whatnot. But wow, I'm.
Well, and then he said loss of earnings. He said, you've got so many people at the moment that you're in demand, so your earnings have gone up somewhat. But at that time, it had gone up, but it hadn't taken off like it did when I took the British government to court, because I was fighting for the fact I needed to change my birth certificate.
Before, one question though, before it goes in, so I guess they'd been hounding you, the tabloids, and I mean that has to be in the back of your mind that at some point this is going to come out. Does that how does that play in your mind as you're going through, say, a modeling career or a TV career? I mean, is that something? Do you just put that out of your mind, or I mean, are you concerned about achieving a certain level of success that if you became more of a public figure that is like blood to a shark there? Or, I mean, what's going through your mind this time?
Myself. So that is what I had been doing. I mean, before the exposure came out, I had worked for 7 years and successfully. So yes, I wasn't trying to. I mean, I had reached a level. I was working in Europe, and
Right.
I was working in a very hard profession because when you're a model, you're typed as a type, and you're either fashion, photographic, and I had done everything. So yes, I did the fashion shows, but the bulk of our money I was earning was catalog work.
Okay.
And then I was doing a lot of glamour work, which it didn't bother me because I had done topless work. I'd worked on stage. So doing pin-up and calendar and tasteful. I mean, I'm not talking about porno, open leg, or
right.
Subtle,
right. Yeah.
elegant, beautiful calendars and pin-up, and Europe has plenty. So yes, the photographers used to book us, and we, to go to some exotic place, and that was just so rewarding. So no, I mean, that was a compliment. If I could work and in a profession that was, it was complimentary to me because I had so many inner complexes, I guess, being from the background that I had. So if someone was going to offer money to take photos of me on a physical and my physical attributes alone, and that's what it should have been, and that is what I succeeded at, and not. And my gender should have been incidental. I that was very painful when it came out, and I did fight long and hard for rights, and I did, try to change things, and eventually it has changed, fortunately, but not. I did win at the Court of Human Rights for the right to marry and for the right to change my birth certificate, but 3 years later on an appeal, sadly I lost because of the church and procreation and all the things that we have today.
All the things that you're not required to actually do or belong to or anything like that.
No, I mean, 2004, I mean, they just had the gender recognition.
So it wasn't until 2004?
Yes.
Oh, wow. So it's almost a decade. It's basically a decade later.
Yes.
Oh, my God. Okay.
When I lost with the review, under the appeal, they said they would keep the situation under review. And it was sad because April Ashley, she was a famous transsexual that got married in the 60s.
Yeah. And
Corbett versus Corbett. And then after that implemented the law as it stood, and it was not a legal marriage between two biological males. And from that point, all the different cases that we went to fight the right to marry and change our birth certificate was, all challenging that. But prior
challenging a precedent, makes it tougher.
But prior to that, there was no issue. There was 2 or 3 well-known transsexuals that actually did have the papers changed and got married and just blended into living. And
wow. Huh. So now, and it was shortly. Now you mentioned the Bond movie, and it was at that time that really the tabloids did finally publish what they had, and you were outed essentially. But that was also you also published your autobiography that year, or shortly thereafter,
I did one quickly as a statement, which is I am a woman.
Yes.
Which my agent got sorted out with somebody that she knew at the publisher, and just because I felt like I was treated like a criminal, and I thought, gosh, I had no control over the way I was born,
right?
And with all the love and support that I had from my family and close friends, I initially I was devastated. I mean, I can't pretend any otherwise. I mean, it's just not something I was proud of, unfortunately, and
that's the society, unfortunately. That's the message that you'd been getting.
Yes, I hate labels and all the rest of it. Right. And the headlines were so vicious and nasty. But I had a relationship with somebody that made me feel special, and it didn't matter. And that's why I took my fight, and it just got stronger and stronger. And I mean, at that time I shot for Playboy, and we had a cover and all excited about that. I had been in Playboy prior when I was in a Bond film and various other girly magazines, but nobody knew.
Oh, so you'd actually you now was the second appearance in Playboy, was that a photo shoot or was that just for the article? Because I think I had read the article actually, but
Oh no, the shoot that I did for Playboy in 93, I think it was, was when they fully knew, and I had my case at Strasbourg, hadn't got a result, but I was pretty confident that I was going to win because I had all the indications.
Now it's interesting because I would just my impression on it, and I'm curious to get your take on it. That these days, I would think you'd have 100 different camps screaming about political correctness and bad representation, and if that's the right way to go about it, blah blah blah. Because everyone's got to have their opinion today. But I wonder if at the time, if there wasn't something normalizing about that, and if that's maybe changed over time. What's your take on that?
Well,
I mean, because it was kind of a radical thing at the time, no?
Well, the reason I wanted to do Playboy at that point, and I felt it was very relevant because I wanted to show people. I mean, the Jerry Springers bring the bad examples of people like myself, unfortunately, and I wanted to show the type of people that read Playboy, or the jocks and what have you, and I just wanted to show them that we can be sexy and attractive, and hopefully get some understanding and empathy for the struggle and problems that we go through. So I was happy to do that, but then it was shelved because one of the advertisers absolutely freaked out and decided that they would not advertise, and they obviously spent quite a bit of money. So that was pulled. But I still came over to the States, and I think the first show I did was with Donahue, and he was so lovely, and that just escalated to more shows. And then I was invited to meet Mr. Hefner, and we talked. And I think once he heard my story as a family man, he totally understood where I was coming from, and they decided to rerun. But I didn't get the cover for America. I did for the other editions around the world, but it was okay. It still ran, and it was done the cause justice, and it was great.
Right.
And
so it actually took Hefner himself personally getting involved. That's something. Wow.
Yeah, and he couldn't have been a better gentleman. I mean, just the place that the wife at the time, and Kimberly, and the little baby that they had. I mean, it was just wonderful. I mean, they just treated me with such respect, and I really did appreciate it at the time because it's hard going. You're coming into a country, and I loved America and all the attention I was getting, but I was getting good and bad, and I hadn't. I'd worried about Joan Rivers. I knew Joan Rivers, but she was wonderful. I did a great show with her. Montelli Williams, he was great. I mean, I couldn't complain. And then I never heard of this one character called Howard Stern.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah. I know. We know about Howard Stern.
Well, I didn't at the time. And that was just, that was the time where I was feeling a little sensitive because, I had spent quite a bit of time campaigning, and it became a little bit of a joke. I felt I was just...
Yeah, he's... he's changed over the years, but yeah, he's definitely not... I mean, he will go for shock value and the cheap joke whenever he could, for sure.
Well, I was on tour, and, I was backwards and forwards to America, and that just kind of... at that point, I had met somebody, and I was getting married, and, I was wanting to settle, and I just felt... enough. That's, with not just that, but so many different all the jobs that were getting offered me. I felt like a circus act. I thought, this is not all what I've been fighting for is to meet somebody that just loves me for me and to be able to marry and settle. So why the hell do I want to go do this now? And that money just that's enough. I just didn't want to get caught up in it all. Sure. And it's so easy to turn my back on it and settle for a quiet life. And that's how it's been for over 20 years until recently. Right.
Well, I wanted to ask you about, I got a couple of things here. So, but backtracking a bit, if I remember correctly, around 1989, around the time that it was won, that the original case was won, and that ultimately it was overturned, though. There was another newspaper story that, as I understand, that had a pretty profound effect on your marriage at the time.
Yes. No, when I started the court case, I was engaged to an Italian. Yes. That sort of all fell apart. He turned out to be what everyone warned me, a bit of a playboy. So that's not why I wanted. So I continued, and I met somebody that I thought absolutely loved me for me. And when we got over we were dating for 4 years, and then he asked me to marry him. And my mother said, "Oh my gosh." I mean, everybody loved him, all my friends, the family, but I hadn't told him. I mean, I should have probably told him a lot earlier, but I gave him my book and said, yes, he was a businessman, and he was not familiar with my work and the book and all that sort of thing. And he read it and he said, oh, gosh, and he was so accepting. And, he said, I'd like you to change your religion for me because my family, they're Jewish, but he was not Orthodox and he wasn't kosher. He was liberal. He was born in the UK. And I said, well, I went away and to a health farm and I was reading and I thought, well, I'm not an overly religious person. There's always a lot of questions. I like a little bit of this and a little bit of that as a religion.
Right.
And liberal Judaism didn't have a problem with. It answered a lot of questions, and I was happy to do that. And I studied for a year and converted.
Right.
And we planned the wedding. And being a very prominent family in the UK, and he's a very successful businessman, it was done at the Savoy and 300 people, and it was fantastic. And we had a lot of guests, and I was paranoid that somebody would say something, and actually they did. One of somebody actually said, were you ever in a Campari advert? And I said, no, actually. And I wasn't. I was in a big campaign for vodka, Smirnoff vodka.
Yeah.
So I didn't actually lie. But I said to Elias, oh, my God, someone's just asked me if I was in the Campari. So I think they're on the track. And he said, don't be silly, because we had covered. I was imagining, going down the aisle, and when they asked, has anyone got any objection, someone was going to shout yes and something awful. So,
oh, God.
It was a bit nerve-wracking.
I would imagine. Wow. God. Not generally something most people have to have in the back of their heads. Good Lord.
No, I guess not. But
wow.
If you're born transgender, I guess you would have. But so we got married. We had a wonderful honeymoon, and my husband got sick. He got too much heat, and he said, look, this is too hot, let's go somewhere else. We left Acapulco and went to Jamaica. And fortunately we did, because when we came back at a different airport, and the media were all there, and News of the World did it again. I landed on my feet and married multimillionaire Elias Fattal, and it ran front page for the early editions.
Right.
And I got home, and he was devastated. And the biggest mistake I made, I think, was not going home. He's with him. He said, no, you come and talk to my family. And I said, I can't. I'm just so jet lagged. I can't. It was such a hard time with the mother rejecting me in the early days, because I was, Christian. And that was a hard obstacle to get over. So at this point, I thought, oh, my God. And we had hoped that they would get a chance to get to know me, and then we were going to use my sister or my girlfriend to be a surrogate, and then would explain after some, because when someone get to know you, they get to know and love you for you. And they don't know you, and you have to just suddenly say, oh, by the way.
Yeah, it's in other words, it's easier, or they'll be more accepting when they actually understand who you are as a human being, as opposed to, I don't really know you, I've just barely begun to accept you, and here's this big label, here's this big thing that is not very well understood and is still
a lot easier now than it was back then. So yes, gosh.
Yeah.
But yes, so he was summoned. He caught, the phone rang, and he spoke, and I could hear yes, and his mother giving him orders, got him home, and basically that was it. I had to deal with a brother. The whole thing got so ugly. I was in fear for my life. It was just awful.
So, and there were threats. There was vandalism, no, or threats to your life, threats to your.
Well, I was dealing with the brother on the phone, and he was asking me, "What is it going to take for you just to, to get lost and all the rest
Jesus.
of that repair?" And I said, "Well, I've just suddenly got to get my life back." So I said a figure that I thought would be reasonable, and he called me all kinds of names, and I said, let's just go to court then and leave it to a court.
Right.
And they had just had a huge court case as a gentleman's agreement with a big food company in America, and won, but it was based on a gentleman's agreement. And I said, that case you just won, maybe I need to turn up as a character witness and a gentleman's agreement. That was probably the big mistake, because that's where I was getting phone calls and ringing on the doorbell to, I was going to die basically, and my brakes were tried to be severed. I was in the car with my mum driving down the road, and someone was waving, and there was all fluid coming underneath out of my pipeline. So it was just ghastly, and I had to call the media. Well, I called Scotland Yard, and then after Scotland Yard were involved, and it was very in the news, and the media were involved. I felt that saved my life, basically.
For once the media was on your side, or you could use them to some benefit.
Yes, for a change.
Yeah, exactly. They owed you one. They owed you a few at that point. Jesus.
Well, it wasn't News of the World. It was other papers.
Well, yeah. I lump them all together. They're all bad. I lump them all together. So now, and the other thing, it was very interesting, and I think you touch upon this more in your new book, if I understand it correctly. But you talk about the legal issues that come up when you can't change your birth certificate, when you're not recognized in the appropriate gender. It's a lot more than most people, I think, realize.
Well, exactly. But getting back to my marriage, I had one at Strasbourg. So technically, I was hoping that the law would be, but the appeal held everything up. So I got married when I'd actually won at Strasbourg for the right to marry and for the right to change my birth certificate. Right. But then the decision, it was soon after I got married, the decision came through and I'd lost. So when actually we went to court to get a divorce, it basically, he said there's no marriage to begin with.
Oh my God! So that was applied retroactively. Oh my God!
So I looked at my lawyer. I said, Henry, what about the fact that he has perjured him? Because he had written the fact that he had no knowledge of my background. He went that route. Yeah. And I said, come on. I said, I've got all these friends and witnesses that knew he knew and were parties. I can prove he knew. Yeah. And they said, this is a matrimonial dispute. One or the other always lie. Even if you tied yourself up for the next couple of years in courts proving he knew, it would be, he's not going to be done for perjury because it's not a criminal case. Oh. So I just had to walk away with nothing and get my life back in order. But very painful period of my life.
That I can't imagine a worse outcome in terms of the court. I mean, oh God. Right. That's awful.
With the law, you're talking about the law. I mean, the fact that your birth certificate is amended, and then things like insurance, you get asked for that, and that causes issues. Also, your pension in the UK, you pay a stamp, and there are two different stamps: one for a woman, one for a man, and you get your pension at 60 as a woman, and you get your pension as a man at 65. Wow. Well, being transgender, you get your pension at 65. So. Right. That's a problem. Yeah. Wow. There is question of toilets even now.
Oh, here too, yeah.
So much worse. You could not. Every time you go to the bathroom, you're breaking the law because you're going into a woman's bathroom and you're not technically female. You're still a male because your birth certificate states that, and you were born that way. So there was all those, and
prisons too. If someone was accused of a crime.
Yeah, you go to a man's prison. Yep. Wow. You'd have to be isolated, buzz cut and isolated, but disgusting. I mean, I thought, well, what? It didn't make sense. If you're accepted medically, and then you're given treatment, why be stuck in legal limbo? And that's how you were back then. I mean, now, it was only actually 2 years ago I got my birth certificate finally changed because.
Oh my God! Serious?
Well, I had fought for it for so long. Yeah. I thought I'm sentimental about it now, and it really doesn't. It's not going to mean anything to me now because I've gone through my citizenship. I got married. Okay. Why do I need this piece of paper now? I'm not going to convince anybody.
Right.
One digs around, they know exactly who I am. So I left it right up to the point that I was getting close to being 60, and I wanted to find out if I was entitled to my pension. But that's when they confirmed, because they needed certain documents. It was rather silly because they said, you need to get a divorce. You can't be married while you're changing your documents like this or beginning.
What?
Can you believe that? I said,
that makes no sense at all. Oh my God. But if you were still legally considered male, then there wouldn't be a marriage in the first place under the law at the time, no?
Yes, that's what I said. I said, you're telling me you do not recognize my marriage because technically I still had a birth certificate. I got married in a country where they overlooked that because they do allow transgender people to marry.
Right.
So I got married in a church.
Yeah.
They accepted everything, got a certificate. Everything was 100%. I've been recognized in the US.
Yeah.
I never had a problem. You're telling me up to 20 years I have to get divorced
from a marriage that they would not have recognized in the first place. That's the
crazy.
real kick
I said,
in the
that's
pants.
just not going to happen. So,
oh my God,
I had to do an affidavit, and I had to somewhat tell a white lie, saying my marriage was a blessing. It wasn't a marriage; it was just a blessing. So that softened it. And they looked into my medical. They wanted medical files, and I suggested there's Charing Cross, blah blah blah, and the
you could have sent them to the World News there, or News of the World. Well, they have everything. Just call them.
Well, they actually did, because when they no, they went. You're laughing. They went to the.
I was kidding. Cross, I didn't realize
the files, and they weren't there. They were missing.
Oh, of course, because God forbid that do you any good.
So now we need to establish whether that was the right thing. I said, "What are you talking about? The right thing?" Well, you're going to have to do an evaluation with another psychiatrist to make sure. I said, after 40 years, you're telling me you want me to get reevaluated to see that I made the right decision?
Well, I mean, you might want to know yourself, right? I mean, you must have still had doubts after 40 years.
Oh, very much so.
Unbelievable. Oh, my God.
So, it was just, and to top it all, when I looked into doing a forecast with my pension, it didn't matter. I thought, well, sod this, because I hit, it was if you were born after 1952, you get your pension at 65 regardless. They changed the rules, so everybody, men, women, all get their pensions at 65. Right. So after all that stress, and I did do an evaluation over the phone, and I fortunately got through just 1 hour evaluation with somebody that evaluated me, who was some bigwig there, but fortunately.
Well, I mean, at that point, had they heard of you? At that point, did they know who you were? Because you have to be one of the most famous transgender people in the world at that point.
Well, I actually said to the lady that was working there, I said, "You do know who I am?" "Oh, yes, I know who you are." I said, "Well, I was one of the ones that were, hitting this whole thing to get established." I said, "It took 2 or 3 cases to finally get and implement the Gender Recognition Act." And I mean, she was a regular female, and she had a job, but she had to go through all these sort of rules and regulations.
Well, yeah, she's bound by that, but I have a hard time. I'm just wondering how seriously she can possibly take it at that point too. I mean, she's put in such. Well, you both are put in such an absurd situation.
Well, the funny thing is now, I mean, the gender recognition panel gives you a birth certificate and changes it. Even if you haven't had your gender reassignment surgery, you have found your new identity, you're comfortable, you're living 1 year as a woman, and they give they change all your documents. So you're now recognized 100% female, and you can marry.
And when did that come into effect? When did that law change? I'm sorry?
2004.
2004. Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. 2004. Right.
And also 2 men can marry, and I believe Elton John was one of the first, but 2 men can marry, and in a church. So came along complete, from what I was fighting. I mean, it's just frustrating, actually, and well, somewhat upsetting, but there you go. I mean, I'm married and
Well, I did want to ask you because, I mean, it is a different world. I mean, it's not to say that we don't have a long way to go. And I think particularly in this country, it seems that and not to dismiss or diminish all of the struggles that you had in England and in Europe, but again, everything that, all the years that you're mentioning are 10, 20, 30 years ahead of where we are today in this country, in a lot of ways. But I am curious if, I'm sure that you're encouraged in some ways by the progress, but I also wonder if if it isn't frustrating, or if there isn't some bitterness about, why this is such common sense. Why wasn't this done so long ago? Or why were there so many inconsistencies and contradictions that you had to deal with that people today it would seem absurd, or a next generation, let's say a generation from now, it would seem absurd to hear this story. It seems absurd now.
I mean, it does. I mean, the bitterness doesn't get you anywhere, does it? I mean, you just
No,
kind of move on and dust yourself down and carry on fighting. But I mean, I'm absolutely thrilled with, Jazz Jennings and you've got Laverne Cox and people that are so comfortable being out. And, Caitlin has brought a big,
I wanted to get your take on that because obviously the reception there and the way that the media has handled her, I don't think there could be a more different case between yourself and Caitlyn Jenner, or as you mentioned, Jazz Jennings, Laverne Cox. But
I mean, what happened was in the spring. I mean, last year, my husband said to me, why don't you get your book? He said, have you seen some of the prices of your book? It's 4,000 and 2,000. I thought, there's a couple of generations out there, he said, that haven't a need to read and you can help and with your journey and what have you.
And this is the second book you're referring to, My Story from 91?
I was actually, so last year we started to convert, it's time consuming. I mean, I had all the rights back to me and I thought, well, everybody has a Kindle or read on a tablet and what have you. So that's probably the way to go. So we started that last year and, an hour here and an hour there and weekends when we had some time and, because it's takes an awful lot. It's technical and a bit complicated to explain, going from text to transferring it to that kind of different format.
Yeah.
But and then in the spring, I suddenly, with all the transgender issues going on in the news and acceptance, and then Caitlin coming out. Well, just prior to her coming out, actually, that was when I had a call saying. Playboy they feel that they were ahead of the game and they want to rerun your story. And I thought, well, can they do that? And, oh, yes, they have the pictures and everything. And how would you like to take part? And I said, well, not to do any pictures at my age. Thank you very much. Well, Playboy is not the forum for, photographing 60-year-olds. So, no, I just didn't feel comfortable with that, but I was happy to do an interview.
Sure.
So, no, I had a wonderful interview, very nice, and it kind of blew me away because he said, actually, I'm gay. And I thought, oh, well, we have come a long way. Here's one of the main editors of Playboy who's a gay guy. And I thought, oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
So I said, oh, you don't think you should be working for Playgirl and instead of Playboy? And no, everyone was okay. And he was open and upfront with it. And
right.
Fine. But no, I did an interview and they asked me about Caitlin. And at that time, it wasn't Caitlin, it was Bruce. But everyone knew what was going on until, he finally came out. But I just had said, and I still say, I pray that she's getting the right counselling and she's not cutting corners and she's not rushing because she is obviously comfortable and she's found herself with her identity. And that's great. And we go back to what we talked about earlier, made you laugh. Whatever's between your legs is a sex toy. And she's obviously used it and has functioned and been very successful. So now if she's a lesbian, that's fine. Why cut it off just to buy a strap on? So, me. Don't laugh. No, having surgery is serious. I would hate it. No, to go through
You're
all
killing
that.
me.
And then, I mean, she's into women. She admits that.
Yes.
I just want to make sure that because there's no turning back. She's obviously comfortable. She looks amazing now, and she doesn't have to worry about car payments and mortgage payments. So I don't think she really is concerned about good or bad press at this point in her life, and she's happy. She's 65. What the hell would you want to rush into something that you're not sure about after all those years? I mean, I knew, at 14, 15 and earlier, because I was having blackouts and all the rest of it, there was something amiss. But if I could have functioned in a way that she has and with just an identity issue and that she's now sorted, that, I honestly, I just pray that she's definitely having the right counselling because I would hate to see her miserable. And she's got family and good family support and friends around her. So let's hope she is getting the right counselling and doesn't make the bad mistake. But I have seen a few episodes and I cry. I do cry. I find it very sad,
Huh. And that's the flip side of the awareness and whatnot, and that somebody who is a child that's growing up today and a young teenager growing up today will have that awareness. And if they have these questions, if they have this struggle, they'll have role models, they'll have information to get, which was very different, of course, from way back from when you were coming up.
Right.
But yeah, on the flip side, though, you're right, is that can lead to some poor decisions as well, or lead someone to get into something that maybe isn't. They think it's the right thing, but it isn't. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I still talk to my mum now and say, "Oh my God, Mum, do you know I was probably only about 5 years away from the electrotherapy where they put shocks. I mean, she was taking me. I was 9 years old. I remember going to different hospitals and they were putting electrodes all over my head and oh, don't worry, it's homo. He'll grow out of it."
Oh, jeez. And then, because this is a time period in which homosexuality is still viewed as a mental illness.
Yes.
At the time, yeah. So completely. So, I mean, I've got a very open question here, which I think we've covered beyond that. Which was originally I was going to ask sort of like just to get your take on the status of political and social progress. But I think we've more than covered that. But I'm curious to get your take on where to go from here. What the next, if there's something lacking, or if there's a particular issue that you would like to see addressed in the forefront next, what would that be?
Well, I just acceptance of the whole subject. I'd like people to be more open, like the new generation. They're not prejudiced, they're exposed to it, so they're not. I mean, it's just the older generation, and the Bible Belt is having a difficult time with it.
Right.
But the fact that, same-sex marriage is now legal, and, people say, and, the fact that someone's gender or what they originally, it should be incidental. It shouldn't matter. If you're a performer, an artist, or whatever, you shouldn't feel that you've got to be held back to succeed and be successful because you've got something to hide. It's just so nice. I mean, I know Laverne Cox is a successful actress, and she is playing a role as I wonder if she'd have had the success as an actress if someone offered her the role as a transgender person, whether she would have accepted it.
Mm.
I guess, I don't know. I mean, I think things have definitely changed. It doesn't matter. I mean, I believe someone from Georgia now is recently part of a new, one of those, what do you call those TV shows? Reality TV shows.
Reality TVs, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of those myself. but no, I mean, I just would like to see it. Why does it matter?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, life is so short, and we've got really serious issues in the world over religion. I mean, it's just pathetic to go, exploit someone or make somebody feel so uncomfortable and over something they had no control over.
Right. Wow. Well, Caroline, I appreciate it so much. Thanks so much for coming on and sharing your story with us. And best of luck with the with the book. And it's great that another generation is going to be reading this, and hopefully that helps as we move forward with. I keep saying we're one generation away, one more generation, and kids growing up today with, in this environment they will not even be able to relate to the world as it was.
Well, I think we are close, because I did an interview with Cosmo, and I said to the person, "Are you male or female?" "Well, I'm not, I don't like to call, I'm queer." And I said, "Oh, what's that?" And they said, "Well, I was born female, but I don't put," and that's something, they're comfortable with it. That's fine. I'm the older generation, and all these different variations are coming out, and it's great. I don't have a problem with it.
Right.
They're not harming anyone. She's very talented and didn't want to sex herself. So she said, "I'm just between." So great.
Right.
So we're getting close.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thanks so much for coming on. I appreciate you taking your time, and all the best.
Thank you, Eddie.
I'm so grateful for Caroline coming on, taking the time to talk to me and sharing her story with us. Just so everyone knows, her audiobook, My Story, is available on Amazon for the Kindle platform, Kindle readers. And I'm so grateful. I want to also apologize to anyone who thought it might have been inappropriate during that segment towards the end there, where I just sort of bust out laughing for about half a minute there. Obviously, there was, in the middle of a very serious conversation with a very serious person, I was completely unprepared for someone to say, no sense chopping it off just to buy a strap-on. I have no problem with anyone saying anything or expressing themselves a certain way, but that just
that just hit me out of the blue like a shock, and I just could not help myself. That was just so funny the way that she expressed that, and of course she then told me to stop laughing because surgery was serious business. And I think everybody knows if someone tells you to stop laughing, you're going to laugh a little harder. She had such a warm and genuine nature about her, but her sense of humor was really something that I was not prepared for, obviously, and just had such a great time talking to her. I also I want to say that I'm as proud to have had Caroline on this program as anybody else that I've had so far. I got a note from a friend of mine prior to the show that really just to the effect that Caroline was her personal hero, and it really was. It meant a lot to me to know that one of my guests or that one of my segments might mean something to someone else in a significant manner, and I've really enjoyed everybody that's come on. I've met some such great people, but Caroline in particular has really just her life story and everything that she's dealt with over the years and everything that she's fought to bring about politically and socially. It's humbling to think that she took the time to come out and talk to me. So I really appreciate that, and I just thank you so much. A couple of other things before we sign off. Next Saturday, the 26th at 8 p.m. Eastern, we have Sheena Rose on. She will be our special guest. And also, we expect to be, and this is not official yet, but anybody who's been following the Facebook feed knows that there's a new segment coming up. Usually when I sign off, I invite anyone who has questions or comments or suggestions for future shows, guests, or topics to email me at niceguy9418@usa.com. I've gotten precious few emails, but quite a few Facebook notifications and comments in the chat room on Rainbow to the effect that everybody wants a little bit more of Doc and Barbara, but Doc in particular. And I want to announce that we will be ending each show with a new segment. I hope to start this with Sheena's show, and I'll make an announcement on Facebook if it's going to be that or the following. But each show was going to end with a small segment. Doc has agreed to do this with us called Cooking with the Doc. And Doctor will come on and we will discuss some of his culinary expertise, and he'll share that with us. And we're going to make a regular segment out of that for the foreseeable future. So anyway, stay posted for that. Again, if you have any questions for other future shows, guests, or topics, or questions or comments about anything you've heard here tonight, please email me, niceguy9418@usa.com. You can friend me at Facebook on Eddie Cabot. Leave a comment on my blog at eddiecabot.blogspot.com. Follow me on Twitter at NiceGuyEddieCab. Follow me on Tumblr at NiceGuyEddieCabot. Enjoy the rest of your evening and keep on listening to Rainbow Radio.